For the next set of notes, we're on page 310 in the notebook, and we are going to talk about solving multi-step equations, the steps we take to solve them. So for this, we are going to look at this top section here, and we're going to talk about being able to identify what you're doing when you're solving an equation. So before we actually get to the solving, we do these steps to simplify, and we've talked about these in previous notes. We use a distributive property if we see parentheses first. We combine like terms when we see like terms on either side. And we cross multiply if we have an algebraic proportion. Then once we get to the point where we can start really solving, we undo addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. And there are these four properties. And to undo subtraction, you use the addition property of equality. To undo addition, you do the subtraction property of equality. And what it means is you add something to both sides or you subtract something to both sides. And you can imagine the multiplication property of equality is used to undo division, and opposite, the division property of equality undoes multiplication. So we're going to go through 4 examples and kind of identify steps to solve. We're going to write out our first equation, and that is 6y minus 8 minus 6 minus 8y equals 4. So there's our equation, and that's where the step given is, right? It's what we're given. So we look at this. The first thing I'm thinking about, do I see parentheses? I don't, right? We're going to go through this simplify step. I don't see parentheses, so I'm not going to use the distributive property, but I see some like terms over here on this left side, so I'm going to combine like terms. So steps to solve. Combine like terms. That's what you're going to put there. And then you're going to go do that. So let's do that. Let's combine 6y and minus 8y and get minus 2y. And then let's combine the constants, minus 8 and minus 6, and get minus 14. And then we're going to bring down that equals 4. And we're going to look and say, okay, what am I going to do next? Well, the next thing you're going to do, since you kind of simplified everything, is you want to get rid of this minus 14 right here, right? And you're going to have to add 14 to both sides. You're undoing subtraction, and that's using the addition property of equality. So I'm going to add 14 to both sides. I'm using the addition property of equality. Meaning I'm just doing the same, I'm adding the same thing to both sides, so I'm keeping the equation balanced, equal. I add that, I get negative 2y equals 14 plus 4 is 18. So now I've got to get rid of the number in front of y and make it a 1. So it's being multiplied. So if you look, I want to undo multiplication, right? I want to undo that multiplying by negative 2. I'm going to use the division property of equality. So over here I'm going to write division property of equality. And I'm going to divide both sides by that negative 2 because I want this to become a 1, so I need it to be the same number over the same number. And I'm going to get y equals 18 divided by negative 2 is negative 9. So those were the steps to solve, identifying what I'm actually doing, and that's what we're practicing here. So let's look at the next problem. Let me give you that. We're going to do 17 minus 3 w plus 5 equals 6 times w plus 5 minus 2w. So that's what's given. First thing I do, right, is I'm simplifying. I'm looking for those parentheses to see if I need to use the distributive property. I do. And if I look, I have this set of parentheses I need to simplify on the left and this to simplify on the right. So the first step is the distributive property. Spelled that wrong, distributive property. And notice I did not do 17 minus 3 first. A lot of people, your brain just sees that, wants to write 14, but that's not how we do things, right? We don't just go left to right. We have to really examine what to do first. So we're going to just bring 17 down, get minus 3w, and then negative 3 times 5 is minus 15 equals, and then on the right, you're going to get 6 times w plus 30 minus 2w. Okay, so next step in this thing up here, combining like terms. I do have some like terms to combine. So let's see on this, so I'm going to write that. I'm going to write combine like terms because that's my next step. And when I look, I have 17 and a minus 15 to combine on this left side. And on the right side, I have a 6w and a minus 2w. So on the left, I end up with 17 minus 15 is 2. And then I bring down my minus 3w equals 6w minus 2w is 4w plus 30. So now I'm looking, I have variables on both sides, and I need to get one of them to go away. I'm going to pick one to either add or subtract. I'm going to get rid of the minus 3w by adding 3w. So I'm undoing subtraction. So by undoing subtraction, I'm going to add 3w, oops, over here, on both sides, and that's going to become a 0. So this is the addition property of equality. So it doesn't matter if you're adding a number or a term like 3w. I'm adding something to both sides. It's the addition property of equality because I'm keeping the equation balanced by adding the same thing to both sides. So now when I do that, that becomes 0. I get 2 equals 4 plus 3w is 7w plus 30. I look where the variable is. It's over here. I want to get rid of that plus 30. So I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. So to identify that step, it's the subtraction property of equality. And when I do that on the left, I get minus 28 equals, this becomes 0, 7w. I need to get rid of that 7b multiplied by w, so I'm going to divide both sides by 7. So that means I'm using the division property of equality because I'm dividing both sides by the same thing, and I end up with negative 4 equals w when I'm done. So notice each step you can identify what you're doing and what math property you're using each time. So we have 2 more examples to do on the next page. So for the next example, it is going to be 4 times 2x plus 7 equals 12 minus 2 times, oops, sorry, not 2, 10 minus 2x. So there's your equation that we are going to do our steps to solve. So again, I have to look up here. What am I doing to simplify? I see parentheses on either side. I'm going to simplify that first. So on the left side, it's just the whole left side is going to get simplified. Over on the right, though, this minus 2 is going to get multiplied by everything in those parentheses. So I am using the distributive property on this step. And when I do that, I get 8x plus 28 equals my 12 just comes down because I'm not doing anything with it yet. Minus 2 times 10 is minus 20. Minus 2 times minus 2x is plus 4x. So now over on the right, do I have any like terms to combine? I don't on the left. I just have 2 terms in there, not like terms. But over on the right, I have a 12 and a minus 20. So I am going to do some combined like terms as my next step. So 8x plus 28 comes down. 12 minus 20 is minus 8, and then plus 4x comes down. I have variables on both sides. I want to make, I guess, the 4x, it's easier to subtract the 4x from both sides. So what that means is, because I'm subtracting from both sides, I'm using the subtraction property of equality. Because I'm doing it to both sides, because I'm doing that same subtraction to both sides, it keeps everything equal, and that's the property. So now 8x minus 4x on the left is 4x plus 28 equals, then I have minus 8, and this is 0. So now I want to get x alone. I'm going to subtract 28 from both sides. So again, I'm using that subtraction property of equality on this step. So this becomes 0. 4x equals minus 36. And I end up with dividing both sides by 4 to make that coefficient of x be 1. So now I'm using the division property of equality. And when I do that, this becomes 1, and I get x is equal to negative 9. So those were the steps that I had to take to solve that equation. Let's look at the last one. So for this one, we're going to do an algebraic proportion. So it's going to be 5 over x minus 3 equals 7 over x minus 9. So when I look at my list up here of simplifying, I'm not going to be doing any parentheses yet. I'm not going to be doing any combining yet, but I can cross multiply because I have a proportion. So when I do that, I am going to take this and multiply it and have 5 times x minus 9. And then I'm going to go this direction and say 7. Oops, don't want to do that color. I'm going to do 7 times x minus 3. And that was using cross products because I have a proportion. Now I can still simplify some more. I have some parentheses. So I'm going to use the distributive property. So when I do that, I'm going to get 5x. 5 times minus 9 is minus 45 equals 7x. 7 times x is 7x minus 7 times 3 minus 21. So now I have variables on both sides. I am going to choose to subtract 5x from both sides to get rid of the 5x on the left side. So because I'm subtracting from both sides, this is a subtraction property of equality. And this cancels out. I get minus 45 equals 7x minus 5x is 2x minus 21. Here's my x. I need to add 21 to both sides to solve, so I'm using the addition property of equality. So for negative 45 plus 21 is going to be 24. Negative 24 equals, and then this is 0, 2x. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 2 to get rid of that coefficient. So I'm using the division property of equality because I'm dividing both sides by the same thing. And I end up with negative 12 equals x for my answer. So this is tricky because you have to identify what you're doing each step. And this is typically not something that you always do solving equations, but it is something that you're expected to know how to do and understand, especially when you take an MCAS. So we want to make sure we practice this skill. So these 4 examples in your notes will help you as we practice these skills in the workbook. So those are your notes on steps to solve.